On this day, in 1828, a convict work gang had ventured into the bush outside the Moreton Bay Penal Settlement on their daily order of work. Led by James Cooper, an overseer who was himself serving a 3-year sentence at Moreton Bay for theft in Sydney, the gang had responsibility for cleaning a new tract of land. Edward Murphy, William Clark, a convict named Longbottom, and one other inmate made up the complement of 5. Cooper and Clark had exchanged words the night before. Cooper, as an overseer, felt that Clark had been slacking off in his daily duties and promised the convict that if he did not start to pull his weight, he'd report him to the settlement and have him duly flogged for insubordination. Clark no doubt appreciated what this could mean for his well-being. In 1828, Moreton Bay was under the control of the tyrannical Commandant Patrick Logan, and a flogging for insubordination could entail anywhere up to 300 lashes and the fair possibility of death. Likely stewing over the verbal threat throughout the night from his superior, Clark's situation was about to get much worse. Early the next morning, just after 7 a.m. on the 30th of April, the gang lit a fire in preparation for their day's work. Clearly not done reprimanding Clark, Cooper again set on the convict under his command and called him a rascal and a scoundrel, reiterating his threat of a stint on the triangles with flogging if he did not lift his game throughout the day. When Clark answered snidely back, Cooper picked up a large stick from the undergrowth and belted his subordinate across the back with it twice, which, for the convict come overseer, turned out to be a very bad manoeuvre. As Cooper turned away to check on the freshly lit fire, Clark hefted his axe and forcefully swung it straight into the side of Cooper's head, just above the right ear, and dropped the overseer to the ground. Not content with the outcome of his initial severe blow, Clark spun his weapon around and hammered the back of the axe head into Cooper's skull a further 2 times, before fellow convict Longbottom finally dragged him away and confiscated the axe. Amazingly, despite the severity of the attack, Cooper survived the onslaught, albeit barely, and the gang gingerly made their way back to the settlement to face the consequences. Cooper spent the next 48 hours in the convict hospital in an unconscious state before finally coming around. He'd see out another 3 months in the facility before he was healthy enough to resume his sentence. Clark was in turn sent to Sydney to face trial in the Supreme Court before Justice Dowling on 1 count of intent to murder and a further count of common assault. Amazingly, after having been found guilty on the first count of intent to murder, on the 18th of September 1828, Clark dodged the hangman's noose and was sentenced to a further 2 years in an iron gang, after which he would see out the remainder of his initial sentence. After his lengthy recovery, Cooper would see out the remainder of his 3-year sentence, becoming a free man in February 1829, but for a heartbeat. Ironically, a couple of days after his release in 1829, Cooper was dragged before Commandant Patrick Logan and a kangaroo court, charged with stealing a couple of cobs of corn. Sentenced to a further 6 months in double irons, Cooper was finally loaded onto a prison transport to Sydney, where he spent 3 days laying in a prison hulk and a further day in Hyde Park Barracks before being turned out onto the street as a free man, destitute, bitter at the system and demanding retribution which never came.